So this week I've been getting the game ready for machines. I started by drawing a template based on the conveyor belts, so every machine I draw fits the conveyors. If you haven't seen the conveyor belts video yet, I've added a link in the description. I then used that template to draw a basic saw and ace sprite. As with the conveyor belts, I'm not sure this will be the final design, as the grey doesn't really fit in with the more woodsy look I'm after. The plan is to just get some basic stuff up and running before I go back and polish up all the sprites at the end. I then created a simple game object in Unity and attached the sprite to it. It fits in well when attached to a conveyor belt, so it looks like the template I made is working fine. When I originally coded buildings, there was no support for an entrance or an exit, which was a bit of a mistake on my part. This will be especially important for machines, which will have dedicated inputs and outputs. So I had to add them and slightly adapt some of the older code to make it work, such as rotating buildings. As the layout is rotated as well, the entrance and exit needed to maintain their position. Having added that, there was actually no way of knowing where the entrance and exit were to see if the code was working. So I took inspiration from an old version of the game I made, and decided that next I would code an indicator, which would show what locations are valid and which ones aren't when placing a building. I could then add entrance and exit indicators to it. First I drew these as separate red and green sprites for valid and invalid. I soon changed that to a simple white one which I could adjust the colour of in Unity. I always try to make things as easily adjustable as possible so I don't spend too much time doing small tweaks. As you can see here, I quickly got a plain white version of this working. It basically creates a new indicator for each position a building occupies and follows the building before it is placed in the world. In plain white, it wasn't very helpful in displaying valid positions, so next I coded colour changes. This works by checking each position on the forest floor, checking whether the space is empty or if the object there can be destroyed. If the object there can't be destroyed, the indicator shows red. Otherwise it shows green. As you can see here, I got that working nicely, but discovered a bug where you could actually still place buildings in invalid locations, such as on rivers. So I fixed that by adjusting the build tools code, tested it, made sure it worked fine, and ticked that task off on Trello. I called it a day there and decided I'd focus on updating the user interface next. I started Tuesday with a bit of a change by going to the music shop and getting a new synth, which I'll be using to write the soundtrack of the game. I'm super into music production, so I'm really excited about getting to work on that. Anyway, next I knew I didn't like the parts of the interface I call ID boxes, which I showed in the first video, that showed up whenever you clicked on something in the world. I found them a bit obstructive and weren't all that helpful. Last week I added the control panel for conveyor belts, which shows up in the bottom right corner when a conveyor belt is selected, and decided this was a better design as it could be made a bit more bespoke for each object type, and didn't take up as much screen space. So first I created one for houses, then the lumber mill, then storage, and then I got rid of all traces of the dreaded ID boxes. The only problem I had now was that there wasn't any way of knowing information about housing, such as tents. I decided to make a separate interface for them which will ultimately allow more micromanagement in the future. I started, as always, by mocking it up roughly on paper. This is just an outline so I know how to put everything together in Unity. I then created what's called a 9-slice, which would ultimately become the main window of the new interface. This is basically a little version of the window which Unity can chop into slices which expand in any direction without distorting the window. Here you can see me outlining each section of the 9-slice. I then copied the storage interface and used that as a starting point, along with my mockup to create the housing interface. While it looks complete at this stage, I still needed to code it so that all the values update whenever the interface is opened. That was all quite simple to do, and I got the housing interface working. It now shows up whenever you open it from a house's control panel. It displays how comfortable the house is for employees, which will affect their happiness, the space left in that house, and who lives there. When I get onto the more detailed aspects of employee management, I'll be adding some options to move employees between houses. So that's all for this week. Remember to subscribe as I'll be uploading the next episode of the devlog next Friday. Thanks for watching.